Hello. I thought I would talk just for a little while today about something that was on my mind. And that is, if you live in the UK, then there's an election happening. And so that's all over the news. And chances are, if you're just a generally functional human being who feels relatively sure about your political opinions already, then you're probably feeling less need to watch the debates and all the drama and all the developments that happen with regard to the election. I wanted to focus on that a little bit because I felt that there's actually something about the coverage of the election that actually, I think, points to what is a genuine deficiency of our whole electoral and parliamentary system. Something light, just to leave you with. So I was watching the leaders' debate between Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak. And now I'm not really going to... I think most people know I'm a bit of a socialist, so I'm not massively fond of either man, to be honest. But I do remember watching it for about 20 minutes and feeling, oh, right, I need to switch this off now. In the sense that I really felt that someone was pointing some kind of energy weapon at my head and causing this sense of anxiety and headache and everything about it was repellent, repulsive. Now it might be that neither man is particularly charismatic. Normally when you watch a debate, there's something about the personalities of the participants perhaps that makes it engaging, even when you don't agree with their political opinions, even when you don't find them to be great human beings. These things can still sometimes be entertaining. But I just felt something about this was not entertaining. It was really horrible. So yes, it was definitely a point that their personalities aren't exactly endearing, but it was just two people going at each other for ages, lying, contradicting, and it just felt nothing productive was happening. And I think that's the thing. When you watch two people go at each other, there's two ways in which you might keep engaged. One, it could be really entertaining, like maybe it's going to kick off and there's something fun about two people having a go at each other. But other than that, you're kind of waiting for a resolution. I think when two people come at each other with a difference, you're waiting for part of you is waiting for a resolution, and the headache begins when you realise there will be no resolution. The resolution will probably be the election. In that case, why watch this dialogue happening right now? And I say dialogue because, if it was Socrates, if it was a Socratic dialogue, then they would begin with something they both agreed on, and then they would branch out from that point of agreement until they found the diverging path between their agreements where it starts to turn into disagreement. That might have been a bit more productive. Now, I know nobody wants to tune into a debate to see if it's productive or not, or whatever. I'm not sure. Maybe I don't see how it would help an undecided person. But there was another debate last night, and this is 7 people from the political parties, some leaders, some not. And I watched a bit of that, and it was a bit more watchable. And so that I just thought, what is it? Is it because there's more personalities? Is it because there's more of a pluralism of views? And I just thought, wait a minute. I remembered back to when they did the first of these live debates, and it was David Cameron, Nick Clegg and Gordon Brown. And that was easier to watch. Despite the adversarial quality of it, it was easier to watch. One reason why it was easier to watch was because there was 3 of them. And I've noticed that they don't have 3 in the leaders debate. Like the Lib Dems were big enough to invite, and I guess the SNP, who are about as big as the Lib Dems were, they're not invited because they're Scottish. That just seems to be the logic, I guess. And now it's just 2 leaders. But as soon as it becomes a binary, I think that's the problem for a start. Also, with a dynamism of 3 people, sometimes what you have is this drama where people try and form temporary allyships and so on to maybe team up on one person, and then it goes the other way around. Sometimes the dynamic shifts again, whereas it's just not 2 things just faced, 2 polarities that just seem to have the same energy throughout the whole thing. The energy of the bigger debate seems to shift. But I also remember a line from those other political debates that when they did it with the 3 party leaders, and there's a line, obviously it's infamous now, which is the "I agree with Nick" line. And it seems so because Nick Clegg was the Liberal Democrats candidate, and the Liberal Democrats were in a position to know that they had no chance of being elected, and so they could promise all kinds of stuff, and that made him very appealing. They ended up in coalition and going back on loads of those promises, and Nick Clegg again just seemed to be a moral vacuum where he seemed to be presenting moral upstandingness. Maybe he was moral upstanding, but in a way that was for sale. He's head of ethics at Meta now, which I think speaks for itself. And so, but going back to that debate, I think it was just something about hearing the words "I agree." Hearing the words "I agree" a few times, there seemed to be something about that just didn't engage the headache beam that absolute polarity seems to engage. Now, what point am I making here about our parliamentary system? We have a first past the post parliamentary system. In other words, it's a bit like the American electoral college, where you're not really voting. So it's not like percentage of a vote equals seats in parliament. It's about you vote for an individual seat in a parliamentary democracy, and then once that seat in your area has been decided, that person makes up the kind of block of parliament. And what the system does is it doesn't represent the plurality of views of a country. It binarizes it. I don't know if that's a word, but I like it. So it binarizes it. It creates a binary so that what we see in parliament is this theatre of just absolute polarity. And what I've noticed about proportional representation which is just when the percentage of a vote dictates which party has so many seats and how many votes in the parliament of that country, is that it doesn't just more faithfully represent the plurality of views in that country, but it also fosters cooperation and compromise. People actually have to work together more when proportional representation, because that happens, because it's always almost like a hung parliament because of this plurality of views, because it isn't artificially squeezed into this binary instead. Now, maybe I don't know enough about the democracies with proportional representation, but I feel that two countries who have an electoral college like the United States, or a first past the post parliamentary system like the UK, I find that it just encourages that binary, and ultimately there's just this eternal sense of polarization rather than cooperation. And I think that's mirrored in what we see in the parliamentary debates, actually, when there's more than one party involved in the TV debates, or even if it's just 3 people or if it's 7. I just feel that idea, we get a glimpse of what that kind of cooperation, where they will fall out, they will disagree, but then alliances will form at the same time. And I think that's a better thing. And unfortunately, the problem is that the only way we can change that is if a government in power changes it, or if it gets voted for in a parliament. But the problem is that parliament, whoever's in control of that parliament, is in control because of the first past the post voting system. So I don't know. I think we might be screwed. I think we might be stuck with it. I think the only way out is true political agitation for the people for a fairer democratic system. Wow, that was me being political, but hopefully not in a partisan political way, just in a way which is actually, we need to talk. We need to find stuff we agree and disagree in. But I think a parliament, in some ways reflects, it almost brings about an example of political discourse. And I think the people are much better than we seem, especially when we're online, at accepting differences and finding compromises and finding ways of working forwards and finding consensus and working from that. That's all I'm saying. I'm going to leave it there because I want this to be a shorter video, because I'm so exhausted from doing these longer videos with my they're lectures really, my previous videos. So I'm just, for the next few weeks or months, I'm just going to chill out on myself and just make these shorter ones because they're kind of fun. Okay. Thank you for listening. Hopefully I won't be as political next time. Cheers.